Hi everyone, welcome back to the Social Hotelier podcast with me, Sam-Erik Ruttmann. FeedSpot has selected us one of the top 20 hotel podcasts on the web, and this recognition reinforces the value of conscious dialogue in hospitality, conversation that matter with people who care about impact. Grateful to the inspiring thought leaders who have joined me over the years and to all of you who have tuned in. So I have a thought leader with me for this episode, and that's Marc Dardenne, who has been with me several times. Marc is the Chief Executive Officer of Abu Dhabi-based Modon Hospitality. So welcome, Marc, and thanks for joining today.
Thank you, Sam. Great to be invited again on your podcast. I think, it's a great activity, and I always love the interaction with you. We go back so many years, and let's try to make it interesting.
Yeah, very good. So first off, I think for our audience to get some background, what motivated you to return to Ecole Hôtelière Hospitality Business School as a guest lecturer, and how does it feel stepping back into the classroom from a lens of a seasoned executive?
Actually, that was really the most exciting week of the year for me. I was really looking forward to it. I mean, I forgot actually when I graduated, so I had to dig out my diploma somewhere in my boxes, and then I found out that I graduated 43 years ago. So you figure out my age. But it's absolutely delightful to go back to a school where you went to so many years back. I mean, I went to visit a few times, and I always enjoyed speaking to the students and talking. But this time was really a full week with 33 MBA students. And, two things. I was number one, excited to be back at the school. The second thing, I was actually quite nervous, right? I wanted to make sure that I was going to go do a good job. And when you start something totally new, and I always like to challenge myself, it's exciting, but you're a little bit nervous also, So, and for me, why go back? Obviously, I had many years of careers, and our careers crossed over the years. Also, I remember when we were in Bali together. And for me, it was really trying to give back really to the young generation and see if they would be interested to hear a little bit about hospitality.
Yeah, I mean, that's very good. I mean, that you're doing that. And I like the idea that we're both about the same age, that we're both challenging ourselves to learn. And when you're a lecturer, you actually are challenging yourself because you have to kind of think how you can make think about their spending. I don't know how many hours they spent with you. That time this never come back to them. So it has to be make them worthwhile that they sat for those lectures and the conversation. So that's how I always feel when I have to do things in front of people. I'm that's a time that I'm with them that has to be worthwhile to them. And I'm grateful if I get feedback that it worked out. And I'm, of course, have to learn from there if I have to kind of learn something else. So I can appreciate that nervousness that you go through, because I would have exactly the same. But looking at your background, we both have worked internationally for years. How do you decide which real world experience to share with students to both inspire and to educate? Because you have a lot of things you can dig into.
Sure. I mean, we got so many stories, right? From early starts to living in countries like in Africa, back to Europe, in Asia, etc. So I was thinking when I was developing the course, what is really the benefit that I can bring to the table, right? So because in today's age, really, with AI and the internet, etc. I think the whole education process is really changing, and we'll have to rethink. And I'm sure even all the universities and schools are rethinking this new age, right? So I was thinking, what can I really bring to the table? And I said, look, what I can bring to the table is really my real time experiences, because it's not textbook, right? It's really what I went through and my experiences, on the good, on the bad, what I would have done differently, etc., etc. And the other part is that obviously over the years I've grown my network, like you know, people that were humble beginnings are now in great positions. And I was really very excited to hear that they were very willing to dial in, you know. So for example, I give a couple examples. I had Simon Casson. He's currently the president of Corinthia. He was the president of Four Seasons. And I called him up and I said, Simon, I know you're a busy man. Would you be willing to dial in and be a judge for the students because they had to develop a project? And then I had another friend. He said, yes, absolutely. You know, I'll do it. And it's 3 hours of his time, of his valuable time. Another example is Stefan Lesser. He's currently CEO in Saudi. He was CEO of Langham. He was CEO of Jumeirah, etc. Again, you know, I think they're sharing the same spirit that I have, is that it is our responsibility as senior leaders to give back to these young students and also excite them about the business, right? So, because I think the hospitality business, for me, and even my wife asking me, would you have done something different if today you had a choice, right? Now, at that time, we didn't have that many choices because you became a doctor, an engineer, a hotelier, and then we did our career, etc. But today, there's much more choices. But I told her that no, I would have never changed because I think our business is incredibly exciting, and it's so varied, right? I think, and that's also the spirit that I wanted to share with the students, you know, to encourage them to really try hospitality.
Very good. So, but those students are coming from a hospitality background because it's held obviously at that business school, or are there some others who are coming from a different background but want to step into this industry? Just to understand the kind of profile of the students that you
Yeah,
had.
I think you know, the hotel school has changed really from my time. You know, 43 years ago, the hotel school in Lausanne was a true hotel school. You learned how to serve, you learned how to cook, you learned how to, you know, the good old style, and eventually you looked at management, etc., etc. But now it's a real business school, right? But I think it's a great school. And when you look at it, unfortunately, potentially, I think it's about 30 or 35% of the students only stay in hospitality. Most of them go in different branches, which is fine, right? But it shows that hospitality teaches them to be well-rounded individuals, right? So you have a lot of banks, wealth management, you have obviously consultancies, and so on. We're looking out for these students because they have a well-rounded background. I mean, I had 33 students, all very polite, well-dressed, very versatile, very eager to learn. I was very impressed by the students, I must say.
Very good. Yeah, I mean, this is one of the things I was interested to learn, that consider how when you were a student yourself, when you graduated 43 years ago, how today's students differ from your peers and so on. But I think you answered the question now because they're coming from a different background and so on.
Yeah, but it was nice also to see the different nationalities. You know, I had students from obviously Europe, quite a few Swiss, but French and German. I had a few students from China, India, Middle East, you know, Africa. It was great to have this 33 students, individuals, different backgrounds in one room, and pretty much the same age. You know, they were all MBA students also. They had gone for 4 years of BA. But and I always say you learn so much, right? From the students, as much as you give them, you will also learn from them for sure.
Yeah, yeah. So, in what way have the questions and insights from the students challenged or reshaped your own thinking as a leader? Because I think you must have picked up some ideas from this time, from that intensive time you were as a lecturer?
Yes, because the course was also based on group work, right? So,
Yeah.
one thing that they had to learn is, work under pressure, work under a deadline, deliverables, work as a group, which is, I think, an important learning over and above the subject, right? So, for me, that was really part. They were assigned early on the first day to form groups and then to present a project and present that project to a Shark Tank. That's where Simon Casson was and Stefan, etc. So obviously, what impressed me, what I learned, is really how creative they could be and how quickly they could really bring things to the table, and as a group, how well they work together, right? So, and some groups work better, some maybe not as well, etc. But that was certainly a big learning.
Fantastic. Yeah. So just thinking about how do you bridge the gap between academic theories and the realities of high-level corporate decision-making in your session, or basically on looking at your experience rather than the academic theories?
Yeah, I think the academic really, obviously I don't have a PhD. I'm not, that's back to what I thought at the beginning, how can I bring the best value for the students? How can they learn the most, right? So, and it's through a process of developing, obviously, a concept throughout the week, a luxury concept. And it could be anything really, from beginning, from A to Z, and then inviting some key speakers, that they could really speak to people that are on the ground, right? So I had, for example, somebody from venture capital, right, to say, okay, if you have a concept, you'd like to have funding, you need to sell your concept. How are you going to do it? What are the key points, that you have to think of as an example, right? And then I had some of my friends and contacts in the branding industry. How important is branding for your concept, the right branding, the right positioning, etc. Human capital, right? How do you develop a winning organization? A dear friend of mine who wrote a book, who used to work with me, also agreed to join, and it was a great session about creating a culture, a vision for the company, and also making sure that that vision comes true. And then we also looked at leadership styles, So I did a comparison between two senior leaders, Jack Welch, who's we all know his leadership style, and then Hubert Joly, who really preaches that success comes through the people, right? The culture and the people, etc. And I said, where is your leadership style? Where do you see yourselves? So that's the learning bit versus being textbooked. And I myself used ChatGPT. I said, what do you want me to do to write something? If I can get it, but I admit that I had it from ChatGPT. I said, this is what it is. Now let's discuss it and so on, right? So for me, again, the biggest learning came, and that's the students, that's the feedback I got from them also. They really enjoyed the session, just because it was so true to life, and I could really tell them true examples of my experiences. So then one session was also about the 10 learnings that I had from my life, right? So we went through a little bit of my whole career, and one is continuous learning, like what you do, what I do. I always thought that I had to challenge myself, so doing an executive MBA, doing online courses, starting to actually teach, etc. That's all part of it, right?
Yeah.
And I thought that really resonated with them a lot. So it was really hands-on versus academic. Then I
Yeah.
backed it up, obviously, by theories, etc. But that was really the concept of the whole teaching.
Okay. So when you spoke about your professional journey, was there any particular theme or topic that resonated most with the students that actually created conversations and so on? If you can speak about that, just to get the feel of
Yeah.
what were the reaction from the students during that time.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of, I must really say, they came, quite a few students came to me and asked for some advice also. And obviously, some had some ideas, concepts in mind. I wanted to get my feedback. A lot of them were asking, what do I do for my next step, right? So, and that's back to what I mentioned earlier, in my time, I remember my time. I mean, I loved hospitality. I wanted to travel. I like people. I like the whole serving bit. And that was my life, right? That's the way I saw it. I really wanted to travel the world. I wanted to meet people, understand different cultures. That was just, and I somehow, I'm a type of person that likes to serve. I'm the first one to open a door. It's not because that's what it is, right? If I see an old lady, I try to help her, etc. So, I mean, not everybody does that. They should do it, but anyway, this is just inherent in me, right? So that's why hospitality spoke to me, and then we go into, went into a career, after hotel school, management training, assistant F&B, F&B. It was never a question of doing something totally different. At one stage, I thought of maybe doing something myself, etc. But I left the entrepreneurship to my wife, and I did the career. Where I want to get to is today they have so many choices, and they are really confused. Uh, I'm not saying everybody, but they really need help. And very often, sometimes the institution, obviously they try to help them, but they need mentors, they need help, right, in their career path. And honestly, it's very difficult to do a hotel school and get your first job. You remember I don't know what your first job was, but I was a management trainee and I made $500, right? So uh,
Yeah.
it was what it was. I don't know what your first job was.
Oh, well, I had. Uh, it was one of the most important steps in my senior year was to get as many interviews as possible when the recruitment guys came in. And there's someone who came into the campus, like we both know, Ron
Oh
Hilvert.
yes, of course, Ron.
And
Yes,
so
yes.
he interviewed me, and I landed a job with Hyatt thanks
Yeah.
to him. So it was a question of what I want to do. I mean, I was talking with Sheraton, I was talking with all the different companies, but I think what inspired me at that time to accept the offer from Hyatt, even though the understanding you started as a management trainee, was that I had a job earlier as a trainee in US, and the director of food and beverage had worked with Hyatt. So I was so fascinated about their thinking about and the creativity. And later on, when I joined Hyatt, my first place to work was in Dallas, and there was a great director of food and beverage. It was David Kong, who is a great hotelier, and he just retired recently from his position as a, I think he worked with either Choice Hotels or something. He was in the president of the company, and we ran into each other. Can you imagine in Berlin run into each other after all these years? And I asked him, "Do you remember me? Because I remember you very well." "Yes, I remember you, Sam." So it was kind of a fun thing so Hyatt was the obvious choice for me, and I never regret it. And I'm always considered to be one of the, as Ron called us, one of Ron's boys.
Yes, yes. Actually, he interviewed me. He didn't take me, so that's why I dropped. Yeah. And I always blamed him. In the second choice, he took me, and then I went to Bali High. That's where we met,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So, but back to these students, right? When you look at they're spending let's say, I don't know, 200,000 US or Swiss francs in education, etc. And then what do we offer them? A management trainee, right? So it's tough, and that's why I think we're losing quite a few people to other businesses, right? So, but again, there's so many choices for them, So it makes it very difficult for them to find their calling. And I always say, look, whatever you do, you have to be passionate about it. And I always tell the story about my son and him wanting to do what I do, but after I put him in a month in a hotel, he realized maybe that's not what I want to do. And he's now very successful doing crowdfunding and VC, etc. So wonderful. He found his passion, right? So that's what it is in life, right? You have to find your passion. Even sometimes people find it a little later. I was very fortunate. I found my passion immediately, right? So, but I think that's one which leads a little bit to another subject is really how we as an industry have to change. And I always say we are dinosaurs the way we operate, and I include myself in the dinosaur category, even though I think I'm a little bit more forward thinking than some of my colleagues. But when you look how we operate hotels now and how they were operated before, there's really not that many changes that we're doing, right? And people change. I see a lot of the blame, the new generation. They don't want to stay. They ask too many questions, and there's some negativity on the younger generation comparing to us, and we were at least staying 2 years in a job, and doing all this, right? So my personal opinion is I don't think it's helping us very much to blame that generation. I think we have to change as an industry. And I'll give you just one example. Ritz-Carlton, uh, many years ago, maybe 10, 15, when I was there, we were so prescriptive in how you do things, Number one, culture, which is great. Ladies and gentlemen, serving ladies and gentlemen is wonderful, right? But then it became what you have to wear, what you can't wear, so descriptive to put them really into a box. And the famous SOPs. You remember the SOPs, the famous
Oh, yes.
SOPs? You will do that, and you won't do that, and you can't do that, and you serve from the right. You place the plate from the right. Even though there's two guests talking, you disturb the guest and put the plate from the right. So
Yes.
you can't do that nowadays to these young people, right? So my philosophy on which is launching a new brand is really to break all these molds and think completely out of the box, right? So we're looking at, for example, facial recognition. What are the big pain points in a hotel? Check in, check out, right? We all know. What's a reception? It's a barrier between the employee or the colleague and the guest. No more desks, right? And I preached that 15 or 20 years ago. Today it's kind of a norm. Okay, no more desk. Nobody says, wow, this is like crazy. This guy is like
Yeah.
a genius. How did he figure that out, right? Yeah, but seriously, 15 years ago, people were questioning, what do you mean no more desks? Where do we put
Yeah,
the
I remember that. Yeah.
computers, etc.? And I now my preaching is facial recognition. Yesterday I came back from a trip. I landed in Dubai, showed my face, opened my eyes, and I was through. So why can't you step into a hotel? We have all the preferences, all the information, the credit card, etc. And then the colleagues can really focus on the guest versus being behind a desk, looking at the screen, no eye contact, etc. So I'm not preaching that we should remove the employee but make it meaningful for the customers.
Yes.
So I think we're diverging a little bit there, but it's no harm to
No, I
diverge,
think it.
right? So back to how do we have to really deal with our employees, the young employees? That for example, also they're much more conscious about the values of the company. If I preach that we are a green company and we're doing all these great things and so on, and then they look at the back and say they don't really care. It's just greenwashing. And then you wonder why the employee or the colleague leaves after 6 months, right? So they say, you told me that you were environment friendly company. You're doing all these great social things, but you're not doing anything, you know? Or you're preaching that you deal with all your colleagues with respect, etc. But then I see, my leader just shouted at me, right? How is that? And then you wonder why they leave, right?
Yeah.
So and then flexible timing. They want to be flexible. You can't put them in a box, right? So maybe we should change the way we approach things to say flexibility. What is really the outcome that you want to achieve in terms of customer satisfaction, right? What is the outcome? I'm not going to tell you how to do it. I'm going to, give you all the tools, but at the end of the day, it's up to you to really make sure that the customer is happy. And that's what they're looking for. They want to be part of the organization, etc. But it's less being told, but actually doing it and feeling part of the success story, right? So there's many different ways that we can look at, and that we have to think differently to really attract this new generation into the hospitality.
Yeah, I mean, it's, rightly so. I mean, I remember those days of SOPs because I wrote few myself, and that was the thing to do. But now, still is in the hotels, as you mentioned, is that we are so focused, almost like in silos, about the hardware in the hotel, and then all that things, and then if we need to question ourselves, well, what are the things that the guest will take back from that stay?
Yeah.
Are they going to know that all the hardware that we are so proud of, or is it something else? And usually the answer is that it's the experience that they walk away with.
Yeah.
So how can we now create that an experience that that is in line of what those guests who are coming to the hotel are expecting? So they're not going to look at the brand of hardware necessarily, or something that's in the back of the house. They're looking for entirely different. I think the way of thinking from the start would need to be experience based. And I also like what you're talking about, is that the facial recognition is that there's that famous thing. I was talking, had one guest on my podcast, Sylvia de Giusio, I think her name, if I pronounce her name. She talked that you have only 7 seconds to make an impact.
Mm-hmm.
It's and I think this would be those 7 seconds can make a huge difference. And technology is here. I mean, I don't know if that's the best answer is to have Google glasses, and that you see somebody walking in, and then suddenly you have the name on your goggle, what the name of the guest is that walks in or something. But that recognition factor is so crucial that you also talk about.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. Name recognition, preferences, etc. Everybody reacts to that. Experiences, etc. For sure. Everybody talks about experiences and so on. That's not even a trend anymore. That's kind of already passé. What's the next thing? Thing. What's the next thing in hospitality? Of course, when you look at the top hotels in the world, right, they're not the standard brands anymore. There's not Four Seasons. It's still very good hotels, the Ritz-Carltons, Four Seasons, etc. They all, special hotels that create this incredible environment. But there's one off, right, or maybe two, or they maybe have three hotels, and that's what really people look for, and they're really willing to pay a substantial amount of money for that, right? So the beautiful thing about starting a new brand, I mean, you could argue, do we really need a new brand? Yes, no. I think, yeah, why not, right? Because you can start from scratch. You can find a white space. You have no legacy. You really can think out of the box. Like the check-in, check-out. The other pain point is always the check-in time and check-out time, right? So, and that's another thing of my pet peeves is 24-hour check-in, right? You buy the room. Technically, you should really buy a room for 24 hours, right? Because if sometimes you pay for a room and it's only for 9 hours, as an example, and then you get told, oh, if you want to extend by 3 hours, you have to pay 50% of the fee. So it's a pain point, right? So why can't we think And when we introduced it with the address, and I don't know if they still have it, everybody told me, but it's a problem because our housekeeper they come at 8. I say, okay, then let them come at 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, etc.
Yeah.
The other good one, sorry to jump on that one because I love that one, is when you can only have breakfast until 12.
That
So
was my thing I was going to talk about.
I took the wind out of your
I really
sail.
love that you check into a hotel and said, well, the thing they hit you with is the breakfast is start from 6:30 until 9:30.
Yeah.
Yes, but I came from Europe, and I'm a
Exactly.
jet lag. I like
Yes.
to have my breakfast at noon.
Yes.
Yeah, sure. We have a room service menu. It's going to cost you another 50 euro.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. The chef has the eggs in the fridge. Open the fridge, take the 2 eggs, do the omelette, right? So it doesn't matter. These are things that are, again, really entrenched in what we do. And the famous back of the house, right? When you look at you were you are obviously still very much into design, on how much money, on interest, etc. We spend 90% we spent on looking at the adjacencies on restaurants and spa and then somebody in the back of the room says, what about the back of the house? Number one, we shouldn't call it back of the house. It's the heart of the house. That's number one. And we are designing a guest journey. We all know that, right? The guest journey, but we're designing a colleague journey. What's the colleague journey? And you normally have the entrance just next to the garbage room, right? That's a nice start of the day when you have that, right? And then you have really nice white shiny tiles in the back, right? So to make sure that it looks like a hospital. And then particularly the lighting is great because that really gives you a headache in the morning when you get to work. Or say they couldn't have found something more horrible than that light, right? And then we go into the employee dining room, which the GM doesn't even know where it is because he never dines there. I'm just saying, I'm
And there's no
picturing a
view
very
from
grim.
the employee dining
No,
room. No
please,
view.
please, no view. Oh, we have an area with a view. No, we don't want a view. We want a really dark, dingy area where they certainly won't have a good time, right? Yeah. So I'm just laughing, and we're laughing about it. But unfortunately, that's what it is. There's some really good examples. I give you one from Hyatt, and I think we discussed that in one of the podcasts. It's really Hyatt in Zurich. Actually, their employee dining room is open to the guests, so it's actually a restaurant. So there's an outside entrance, and I think that's Bernd Coronel, which was, you could argue about some of his things, but really very visionary gentleman. And that was a pure restaurant. Or when I was with the Accor Group, Fairmont in Hamburg, where the heart of the house had the same standards of the front. So the arrival experience had a beautiful couch, a carpet, etc. The kitchen, they did multiple events in the kitchen with guests, right? So guests love kitchens, right? So, and it's really a way to keep your kitchen clean, etc. So these are all the things that you have the opportunity to do something like this if you create a new brand.
Very good. I think this how we have to change. I think we're hitting all the things, and my final things would be that how we promote the hotels. I really love those online brochures where you have an empty room, we only show a bed,
Yeah.
and maybe at the best they show a picture from a balcony. You see an empty beach, or then you have a event area which is completely empty. So you're really getting the impression that's going to be a lot of fun to stay in that place.
Yeah. No, I agree. Or, I mean, companies are moving a little bit away from it, or you have a building, right? So you see the building. So does it really attract you to go and stay there? Obviously, a lot of what we call the lifestyle brands have moved into that direction, that it's all about these experiences and targeting maybe a little bit of a younger generation. But you know what? I like to stay in those hotels myself. You know, I do like traditional hotels also, but I like the blend of it, right? So it's really some people I think are embracing. And you know, I was at a conference just recently, and we were talking about AI and you know, the danger of AI. I say, guys, if we don't embrace it, you're going to be lost. You're going to be finished, right? I remember again 10, 15, 20 years ago when the OTAs came online, right? And I was at that time with Fritz Carlton, and I say, "Oh no, OTAs. We don't do that kind of business, right? We have our business and so on." They had to quickly catch up eventually, but again, we're a couple of years late, you know. So why are we always very late to embrace these new technologies? I don't know, but
Yeah.
I certainly intend to embrace them with the new brands that we're creating.
Yeah, but also like the choice of restaurants. Where usually when people stay in the hotel, they walk around the neighborhood, see what's available
Yeah.
there, and if they want to order from one of those restaurants to eat in the hotel they stay, that has been absolutely impossibility. And I think there are some hotels that have been taking this on board, that
Yeah.
you have an option to order from one of
Yes.
your the partners and so on. The usually reason was that no, you know, we cannot guarantee the food is could be some that is not the quality is not there, and we can guarantee in case you get ill in the hotel and so on. But that's kind of nonsense in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. No, completely agree. Yeah. I mean, the F&B is always a subject on its own, right? When you think about it, right? So
Yeah.
uh, again, when you look at, we're doing a project in Egypt where we are going to develop a concept of European style hotels where it's more or less a bed and breakfast, but the operator actually has a restaurant, but the restaurant is only 100 meters away from the hotel. So instead of putting the restaurant in the hotel, where people say, I don't want to, you know, eat in a hotel restaurant, but you know, even letting them walk across the street to a independently, supposedly independent restaurant, makes a whole difference, right?
Yeah.
So again, F&B is super interesting. What is
Yeah.
happening nowadays in the
Remember
F&B
that
world?
in Bali, Bali had it.
Telaganaga, the
Yeah.
Chinese
Well,
restaurant, right?
you have to walk there.
Yeah, yeah. No, that was a good example, and that worked really very nicely.
Yeah. So a little bit back to the school. I mean, just to have a feel of what qualities do you look for in students that suggest they have the potential to become impactful leaders in global hospitality. Out of those MBA students, there are some things that you're paying attention to in your discussions with them.
Yeah, I think, you know, it's like always, right? You got 33 students, you got the you know, curiosity is one, right? And emotional intelligence, right? Is the probably the other one. It's also communications skills.
Yeah.
You know, that's where some of the students stood out, right? So the curiosity to say, you know, to be with it, to be in the room, right? So I told the school asking me, do they have to come or not come? I said, you know, honestly, if they don't want to come, be my guest. They don't have to come. They have to come for the, you know, the exams, etc. But if they have no interest coming, I certainly won't push for them. I mean, to come.
Yes.
And then you see who sits in the back, who sits in the front, etc. I say, as long as you don't disturb the class, I don't have a problem. You know, if you're late, you just wait until the break and then you come in, right? So I think the curiosity, I think is one. The engagement, you know, you can see if somebody is really engaged, right? And you know, it's a whole week of classes, etc., and so on. So it's not. That's why I try to break out the classes pretty on slow bites, really. But that curiosity, and then the engagement, right? And then finally, like I said, communication skills. Um, and that emotional intelligence to be able to
Yes.
engage with somebody and I'm not saying show the amount of respect, but you know, work with your colleagues, and respect them, work with me on the line, etc., and be able to align. That's where the great leaders are going to come from, right? So especially nowadays, and that's why it was interesting to see that comparison between Jack Welch and Hubert Joly. And I never met Jack Welch, but I had the great pleasure to meet Hubert when he was with Radisson, and he always stroked me as as an interesting character, as somebody I can relate to. And then I read his book, and I said, "This is just a great book, right? It's Business from the Heart, right?" So how he repositioned Best Buy, really, and then his whole career, and how the way he changed his leadership style from the beginning to where he ended up with Best Buy and was super successful there. And I'm not saying that Jack Welch was not successful in his time; he was, but I'm certainly more Hubert Joly type, right? So that's what I say. And then there were a few students which I thought it's such a shame that they don't take this opportunity to really do something with it, because I didn't see them engaged for whatever reasons. I don't know. Maybe they had personal issues, or they were bored, or whatever it is. But you're in such a great school. You have the opportunity to network, etc., and you don't take the opportunity. For me, it's a lost opportunity for them. It's not for me, but for them, right? So
Absolutely.
That's unfortunately what it is.
Yeah. How about then, how do you mentor those students to prepare them for the pressure and complexities of executive roles? Because that's been quite lonely on the top, quite windy.
Yeah, no, true. Quite hot in the Middle East, 50 degrees. But yeah, I mean, it's a journey, I showed them a little bit my journey on the learnings from the journey. So I took from the humble beginnings to the next steps, and where also I made mistakes. I said, look, I made mistakes, right? Maybe I shouldn't have done that, but I never looked back, because I said, okay, look forward, right? One of the points I told them, find mentors, find one or two good mentors, that you obviously we're talking about David. Is this David? The gentleman you saw in Berlin, or
David Kong.
David Kong. I think I met him also once. But in my life, I had also a couple of great mentors that helped me professionally, but also personally, right? So, and and don't so I think I said that really helps if you have mentorship. And actually quite interesting, in my company now, they have engaged some coaches for us, right, to coach us. You would think, by now, there's nothing else I can learn, right? But honestly, I sat with him, and that was not my attitude. I said, well, this is like fantastic. I think some of my colleagues said or were thinking, and I was talking to the coach, they say, yeah, the reaction was a little bit, I don't really need that. I know what I'm doing. I'm not going to change, etc. I took a little bit different approach. I said, look, I'm eager to learn, and I'm eager to change. And then we decided on 3-4 things that we want to do different. One is, one of the things I do a little bit too much is work in my world, my silo, and, we're doing our thing. Don't think of the environment. So to engage much more with my colleagues in the different verticals, right? So I say, yeah, that's a good point. So I started really actually meeting with them, and they say, oh, that's interesting. And then they enjoyed it too, right? I learned from their business, and then out of the meeting, things came up. So that was number one. Number two, I say sometimes I do too much from the heart, right? So this one is obviously from the heart because we have a nice chat. But when I do a presentation, I need to prepare better, right? To be ready to prepare and, and do put my point across, right? So versus talking from the guts and the heart, etc., and then you forget 20%, and maybe they think, oh, he's very genuine in what he's saying, but what's his point, right? So
Exactly.
I really prepared really well for I was on a panel, one of those panels, and I thought, oh, okay, that really helped me to do a better job, really, because I was really well prepared. I had my entry, my exit, my talking points, etc. And I didn't write it down, etc. But I felt I was really ready, right?
Yes, you went through it mentally
Yes,
in
yes.
preparation.
So there's a couple of things like this um, that I really picked up nicely. So the point is, you really you always have to challenge yourself, always learn, etc. And you should be afraid to have again somebody tell you how you can improve. Or my point was Tiger Woods, right? I mean, Tiger Woods had a coach. He had coaches, the health coach, etc. But golf coaches, right? You would think that he knows how to play golf, right? Why does he need a coach? Or like you have obviously Roger Federer, right? He knows how to play tennis. Why does he need a coach, right? I mean, he was top of his game. So even if you are on the top of your game, I still think you need a strong coach, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, Mark, this has been a great conversation, and we touched on a number of things, and but your experience in Lausanne, and then of course it was interesting to have we exchanged few ideas on this about what we have to learn, because we're coming from a generation unlike the current generation, have different needs, and how we have to also change. But my question, Mark, to you is that what legacy or long-term impact do you hope to leave through your engagement with the next generation in Lausanne?
Yeah, I think it's not so much about leaving a legacy. I think leaving a legacy is pretty egoistic. Do you think of yourself? People are going to think that I'm a great guy, etc. I mean, I hope that some people will come when I die. A few people will come to the church, right? That'll
What
be
was his
nice.
name again?
Yeah, yeah. It's okay. Flip through. He's gone, right? He was okay. No, so it's not so much the legacy part, right? It's really one of the things I really want to do is try to get as many people into the business, and
Yes.
because I think it's a great business, and sometimes people don't realize the incredible lives that you can have in that business, right? So I think that's certainly one. The second part is also, it's kind of giving back. I mean, it's a little bit cliche that you kind of learned a lot of things. Why not give back? I mean, you can write a book, which I thought about, but just it's a lot of work to write a book on. And so eventually, maybe I'll write a book. So hopefully you're gonna you're gonna buy me. No, I'll give it to you for free and I sign it, right? So, but
Yeah, and I'll promote it.
yeah, you can promote it exactly. No, a book is a good one, right? It's always good, but what kind of book are you gonna write, right? So, but anyway, so that's the other part. But the other one, it's really a selfish reason, is that I thoroughly enjoyed doing it. It was great, being back in school. I was in a studio, and I must tell you, Lausanne is like a country club, right? So went to the gym every morning, went for a walk, had the swimming pool, all this great food. I say, hey, this is like great, right? So it was really a little bit of a selfish thing that I really enjoyed it, and I enjoyed every day that I was doing my courses, etc. And then I certainly enjoyed some of the students coming back to me and say, thank you very much. They called me Dr. Dardenne. I said, no, don't call me doctor. I'm not a doctor. I certainly don't have a PhD, but it was really nice to see how they appreciated it. Not each one came to see me, but a lot of them, and they sent me a nice note on LinkedIn or sent me a nice email. A gentleman wanted to have a follow-up call because he's developing a resort in Greece and he wanted to have my feedback, etc. So it's super rewarding to do that, right? So I certainly will send you an invitation for my course next year. Hopefully, you can also join. That would be certainly great.
Yeah, that would be an honor. So thanks, Mark. So, well, I think we had a very good discussion. So thanks very much, Mark, for joining this very important episode today about education and also for us who are from the analog period that how we have to change. So with this episode, I just want to say thank you very much for your fantastic insight.
Thank you, Sam. Look forward to the next one.
Thank you for tuning in to the Social Hotelier. If you enjoyed this episode that I had a conversation with Mark, please take a moment to leave us a review on Apple Podcast and give it a thumbs up, or even don't forget to hit the subscribe button to stay updated. Now, if you leave the review on the podcast, you have to use your mobile device when you go to Apple Podcast and just write what you thought about it and what you liked about it. Are the things that you have wanted to hear more? Because that gives me an inspiration to create another episode with Mark. So we have an incredible lineup of guests coming your way in the future. So stay tuned for more thought-provoking conversations. Until next time, take care and keep exploring.